What is Romanticism? What is realism? Probably a good way to start answering these questions is with this painting by Thomas Cole, an American painter, The Voyage of Life, Manhood, a stage in life in which we see a sailor on a boat facing uncertainty, facing mystery, turbulent waters, storms. All this landscape is typical of the romantic view. We live in a world where feelings, emotions connect us to ways of thinking, ways of understanding, ways of living that were repressed, were not so well considered in the 18th century, where reason, rationality, organization took the lead. Romanticism takes its name from Romanesque, something related to Southern Europe, living a life of spontaneity, of affection, of human relationship in a way that is more emotional than rational. And then Romanticism became a synonym of everything that had to do with the internal world, with subjectivity. The I was more important than the we. The I in connection to nature, to love, to the past. Romanticism tends to be an idealist movement. It finds in concepts like love, freedom, people, nobility, expressions of concepts that we are supposed to follow, we're supposed to reach and to express. That's why romantic literature, romantic art is an art that is not necessarily symmetric, it's not necessarily linear, but it's not Baroque either. We have to keep in mind that there is a distance of styles. Romantic art, romantic literature tend to emphasize the individual feelings of the author or the characters. That's why romantic writers and painters get inspiration in the medieval past, in a past that is full of mystery, a past where you can find witches, and fairies, and dwarfs, and elves, a past where chivalry and noble sentiments prevail, as opposed to the petty bourgeois way of thinking, a mentality that it was very much in place with the rise of the middle class and the bourgeoisies in Europe that dethroned the old aristocracies. So Romanticism is in many ways revolutionary, but also contradictory because of its way of looking at the past, idealizing it, a past that was feudal, but obviously without the socio-economic features of that historical reality. A good example of that prestige that past had is the Castle of Frankenstein, that served as inspiration to one of the most important romantic, also called Gothic, novels, Frankenstein, by Mary Shelley, of which we will talk soon. But let's keep these ideas in mind. The world of sentiments, the idealization of the beloved, mostly women, because many romantic poets and painters were men. Unfortunately, at that time, women had little access to education, although there were excellent, extraordinary poets and artists from the Romantic period that were women too. The belief in the value of people, of popular life, as opposed to the bourgeois or the aristocrat ways of life, the contact with nature. And nature presents itself in a very polyformic way, in the form of catastrophes, for example, floods, earthquakes, all kinds of natural disaster, was like a key, a waking call for people to think about the uncertainty of our world and the value of expressing our feelings, living in a more plain way than just being rational and organized. So the Romantic period mostly coincides with the late 18th century, and it extends until the early 20th century. It's a long period that was also opposed by a reaction against that excess of sentimentality that was attributed to some authors of the Romantic period. This oppositional trend was called realism, and it started also in the 19th century, although a bit later, in the 1840s and 50s. We're going to see that some fiction writers like Balzac, Flaubert, Stendhal, Dickens prefer not to emphasize so much the personal feelings of the author, but the cruelty, the grotesque of daily life, the disillusionment, the disappointment of life under a new bourgeois society. Romanticism and realism, again, like the pendulum, show two forms of understanding the world and two conceptions of expressing artistic views.